This tutorial is on Tinkercad. I'm going to go over how to use the primitives to build complex forms. So for the project that we're working on, designing a kinetic sculpture, you're probably going to need some forms that function as weights and counterweights. And if you want to design those as custom forms, Tinkercad is the software that we're going to be using to do that. So I'm going to go through the process of designing a custom form using the group tool to combine shapes to make more complex shapes. So let's say you're working on your sculpture and you needed something that functioned as a counterweight that you were going to hang through a cable or a wire or even a string. So let's make an example of something that would serve that function. So basically you're going to start with the primitives and decide what you want to use as your primary shape. I think for the primary shape, I'm going to just use a simple sphere and then combine a couple spheres together to make a more interesting form. So in Tinkercad, I'm going to come over to the right-hand side to my primitive shapes, and I'm going to get the sphere, it's blue, and pull that out and place it in your work area. I need to change my units of measurement from millimeters to inches. So remember, to do that, you're going to come down here in the bottom right hand corner to where it says Edit Grid. You're going to click that. That'll bring up your grid property dialog box, and you can change the units from millimeters, which is what it defaults to inches. And then you can, if you wanted to, change the default size of the work plane. So just to show you how to do that, maybe I'll set it to 8 inches square. So I'm going to change the width to 8 inches, and I'm going to change the length to 8 inches, and then I'm going to hit Update Grid. So now if I select my sphere, when you roll your cursor over one of the handles, so the handles are these little squares that are on the edge of the form, it'll give you your dimensions, right? So in this case, this is just over 1/4 of an inch. Let's say that I want to make this, that's going to be maybe a little bigger than I want it to be. So let's maybe make it a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to change these to 0.5. 0.5. Okay, so if you look at this form, it's kind of an elongated form because I changed the width and the length to 0.5, but I left the height set to 0.75. Actually, I think I'm going to change that to something taller. Oh, sorry, it's set to 0.787. Let's change that to 1 and hit return. Okay, so I have this kind of elongated, elliptical, egg-like shape. I think that I'll duplicate that. So there's a couple of different ways to duplicate it. You can have it selected and hold Command C to copy it, and then Command V, as in victory, to paste it. But if you do that, it's going to duplicate it and get it out of alignment. And I want to keep the duplicate in alignment. So to make a duplicate and keep it in alignment, you come up here above the little navigation widget. You have 4 icons, or sorry, actually 6 icons. And I want the one to the left of the trash can. So that's going to make a duplicate. The shortcut for that is Control D. So if I click that duplicate tool, it doesn't look like it duplicated the form because they're in the same space. But if I go to the top of that egg shape and I go to that little arrow that's at the top of the shape, that will let me pull the duplicate up. And you can see that I have a duplicate form. So maybe I want to do a form that is kind of three-tiered, right? So that it will be scalloped on its edges. So let's make another duplicate of this form. So with it selected, go back to the duplicate button, and then that will make a third one. Notice that it spaced it this time instead of putting it in the same place, right? It spaced it. And the reason why it did that is because it remembers the last action that you manipulated, right? So in this case, I pulled it up. And when I hit the duplicate a second time, it not only duplicates the form, it duplicates the action. So it moved it and duplicated it. Okay, so I have these three, and let's say that I want to join them together. I can hold the Shift key and select all three of them, right? So select, select, select. And with all three selected, come over to your upper right-hand corner, right? So right above where your solid and whole options are, you have 5 little icons, right? And the second icon, it looks like a square and a circle joined together. That one will group. Notice that your shortcut highlighted in green is Control G. So if I select that, it will now group this into a single shape. So that's kind of cool. Let's say that I wanted it to have maybe, I don't know, a decorative kind of half sphere on the top. So I'm going to get this half sphere and pull that out. And let's go to, let's change the view so that I can see where these are relative to one another. Okay, and then grab the arrow on top of that half sphere, so that hemisphere, and bring it up. Okay, so I could, mess with that and get it in alignments. I went to using the navigation widget, I went to the front view. I could just kind of pull this back and forth and eventually get it into alignment. But the better way to accomplish that is to shift click both of those forms and then come back up here to where your grouping tool was, so the upper right hand corner, and if you go to the fourth icon, that's your alignment tool. So the shortcut for that is L. So I'm going to click the alignment tool and it turns on these handles, right? And so by clicking on these handles, I tell it how I want these forms to align, right? And so in this case, I want the top one. And then I also have another alignment tool down here at the bottom. So I also want this middle one. So that's going to align that. Actually, let me adjust that a little bit. That's going to align these two forms. Yeah, okay. So now they're aligned in the X and the Y axes, right? So I also aligned it in the Z axes, but that wasn't necessary per se for the shape that I'm trying to make. So it kind of looks like a little mushroom or something, right? I kind of like that. Maybe let's join those together. So again, shift, select the first one, select the second one, come to the join tool, so the group tool, sorry. So that's up in the right-hand corner. It's the second tool. Looks like a circle with a rectangle kind of joined together, right? The shortcut for that is Control and the G key at the same time. If I click that, you notice that it all turns pink, and that's your indication, your visual indication to let you know that that's been joined. So now I have 4 shapes that are a single shape. And just for fun, let's maybe do one more at the top. I'll do another sphere and put that on top. So I'm going to bring out another sphere. Let's go to my top view so I can see where these are a little better. I'm going to zoom out. Okay, where did I put it? Not sure. Okay, it's way over there. This is one thing that can be tricky when you're manipulating shapes in 3D software. You can lose where they are until you kind of get used to understanding the space visually, right? So it's important to kind of use the little navigation widget to help you, make sure that the shapes are in the proper place in space, right? Okay, so I'm going to go to maybe the front view, and I'm going to select the pink grouped shape and hold shift and select the blue shape, and then I'm going to align those again. So come up to the right hand corner, go to your align tool. Again, the shortcut for that is L, and in this case I want to align them to the x-axis and the y-axis, so I need to see that bottom widget, and so the 2 center dots are the ones that I want. This one to align it to the x-axis, and this center one to align it to the y-axis. The 3 dots that are on the side would align it to the z-axis, but in this case, I don't want it aligned in the z-axis. I'm now going to select the blue sphere, grab that black arrow that's on top of the sphere, and I'm going to pull this up into space so that it's kind of at the top. I want that to be kind of like a knob on top. I think that's too big though, so I'm going to scale this down. So back to the alignment tool, and this one for the x-axis, and then that center one for the y-axis. I want it to come up just a little bit more. Okay, so I think that let me zoom in, use the widget to kind of look at it. I think that that's what I want. So, you could do, if you weren't happy with it, you could, and you should make variations, right? Make a few of them. So I'm going to go ahead and join those together. Select the sphere, hold shift, select the mushroom shape, and then come up to my join button and join those. Notice that they all turn the color of the last shape that you added. So in this case, it turns blue. Now I don't really care what color it is. When you 3D print it, the color is irrelevant. Now I'm going to use this as a bob. Okay, so it's going to be a counterweight that's going to be hanging on a cord. So I need a hole, right, that's bored through the center of it. And so in order to do that, I'm going to use a cylinder. So I'm going to bring a cylinder out, and it needs to be much smaller than this, so let me scale it down. I'm going to use the handle. Now, if you hold shift while pulling that handle, it scales it proportionately, so you're not distorting it. So that's, I think, about the size that I want. Let me look at that. Yeah, that's 1/8 of an inch. So that'll be a good size hole. Now, I need this to be the height of the blue form, okay? So I can get that top handle, and let's change that from 1/8 to maybe 5 inches. Let me see if that may not have been enough, but let's look. Oh yeah, that's plenty. Okay, I just want it to be longer than the blue form that I made. Okay, so let's pull that over, and I want to align that down the center of the blue shape. So to do that, again, we're going to use our alignment tools, hold shift, and then click the blue form, turn on our alignment tools by coming up to the top right hand corner and clicking the 4th button, or use the shortcut L. In this case, I want to click on this center paddle or handle to align it to the x-axis, and then let's rotate that around so I can see the other handle that I need, and then the other center handle to align it to the y-axis. So now that pole is going straight through the form of the blue shape that I've made. Now I want to cut that out, okay? So remember, you can have things set to solid, or you can have things set to a void or a hole. And let me shorten this a little bit. It doesn't quite need to be that tall. So to make that defined as a hole, select it, and then come over here in the top right-hand corner where your variables are for that shape, and it's set to solid right now. Let's choose hole. Now notice it gets grayed out, and so that basically is penetrating through that form, and that will give us, basically we've made a bead, right? That's going to give us a void to thread a wire or a cord through. So that's basically it. I need to save this, and I don't want it to be saved with the name that it gives it. It gives it, some nonsense made up name. So this one's called Powerful Janka Elzig, or Elzing. So I want to change that. I'm going to just call this Plumb Bob 1. With it highlighted blue, I can name it something else. So I'm going to name it Plumb, Plomb, Bob, Bob1. Now the next thing that I need to do is I need to output this so that it could be 3D printed. So to do that, you're going to come up here in the right-hand corner. You have an import button, an export button, and a send to button. So this is right above where your primitives are, right? And I want to go to the export button, and that'll open up a dialog box which lets me export it to different formats. And so the top formats are for 3D printing, and the bottom format is for laser cutting. And I want to 3D print this, and the printing format that we're going to use is the .stl format. So I'm going to click on that. That opens a dialog box that asks me if I want to open it to view it, or I want to save the file. Let's go ahead and open it so that we can view it, and hit OK. Now that's going to open it up in the software preview, and you can see what the form looks like. Notice that there is a hole that's going through it. Now I want to save this now, so in preview, just go up to the file menu. Actually, it's going to save it. Let's close this. I may have to go back. Let's export it again. Hit the .stl. When the little dialog box comes up, go to Save File and hit OK. And basically, it's going to save it in your Downloads folder. So if you go to your dock at the bottom of your work area, and you hit the Downloads folder, it'll open that up, and you can see that I saved this once. I saved this twice. So there's plumbob1.stl and then plumbob1 1.stl. So either those are exactly identical. So I just accidentally saved it twice. So either one of those files is the file that you would need to input into your 3D printer software to 3D print this form. So that's basically it. Have fun playing around with making more complex forms out of the primitives. And I'll talk to you next time.